Hi, everyone. Welcome to Rationable Interviews. Actually, today we're going to be talking to someone very, very special, somebody I've been trying to get on for a very long time. And unfortunately, my schedule has been absolutely nuts. But I'm really glad to say that Dr. Abby Philips is finally with us here. He is a biliary specialist and a doctor. He's been on COVID duty all this time. So we really thank him for all the good work he's been doing, and he's being taking the time out to spread a lot of good science-based information on Twitter for everyone to benefit from. So, Dr. Phillips, welcome and thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. And we've got a lot to get into right now. So, but first, I just want you to tell us who you are, what you do, what are your qualifications, and what you've done in the fields of research regarding Ayurveda and herbal medicine, etc.
Yeah, I'm basically a hepatologist, a liver disease specialist, and I have done my training from St. John's Medical College in Bangalore, then Nilratan Sarkar Medical College in Calcutta, and finally Institute of Liver and Biliary Sciences in New Delhi, where I did my DM in hepatology and liver transplant medicine. I am currently a senior consultant of clinical hepatology and translational hepatology at Rajagiri Hospital at Alua in Kerala. And I've been practicing as a consultant since last 6 to 7 years. And my focus and area of interest is specifically alcohol-related liver disease and drug-induced liver injury, because of which I do a lot of basic sciences as well as clinical work on herbal supplements related liver injury, which is why I've been publishing a lot of work on Ayurveda herbal related liver injury.
I see. So, were you when you was getting into this, were you focused on trying to find new treatments from herbal and Ayurvedic resources?
Actually, this was what I would call serendipity, because my actual interest was alcoholic liver disease, and Kerala is very well known for alcoholic liver disease. And what I was planning to do was I do a lot of work on gut microbiota, which is basically you modulate the intestinal bacteria to improve clinical outcomes in liver disease. We do that by something known as stool transplant. So that was my interest. But when I joined my unit a few years back, I found out that a lot of patients actually came to me with acute hepatitis, where there is actually jaundice followed by abnormal liver function test, for which there was no known cause that we could actually find. For example, they were not consuming alcohol, they were not on any other prescription medicines like antibiotics, painkillers, which would also cause liver injury, and they were actually not having any other additional diseases like autoimmune hepatitis or Wilson's disease, which are also causes for acute hepatitis. So once we identified this particular group where there were no causes for liver disease, acute hepatitis, I actually started discussing more on their history with them, and found out that almost all of these patients were actually on herbal and dietary supplements in Ayurvedic and Unani and Siddha medicines in the preceding 3 months. And they were taking these medicines for diabetes, thyroid disease, obesity, weight loss, weight gain, and a lot of stuff, including gas trouble and everything. And some were on these medicines for a very long time, more than 3 months. And there was this temporal relationship where the start of this medicine actually led to the start of the event, that is the jaundice and everything in that patient. So this is known as what we actually clinically diagnose as drug-induced liver injury, because all other causes are ruled out and there is a temporal association. So we went ahead and did biopsies of the liver of these patients and after consent, and found out that these biopsies actually had a mixture of lot of different findings. So if it's alcohol-related liver injury, you'll have a signature finding. If it is viral hepatitis, hepatitis B or hepatitis A, you will have a signature finding. You can actually see the virus also inside the liver cells, but none of that was there in these patients' liver biopsies. It was all mixed type of liver injuries, where you can actually see some liver disease patterns of autoimmune liver disease, some patterns of viral liver disease, some patterns of alcoholic liver disease. It's all mixed and matched. The pathologist was actually quite dumbfounded, because she did not know how to report it. Then what we did was we actually analyzed the drug samples that they were on, and found out a lot of these samples had contaminants, adulterants, pesticides, insecticides, modern medicines, which were all actually liver toxic. And some actually contain herbs that are known to cause liver damage. So this is how we actually identified liver injury due to Ayurvedic herbals. And we published this data in 2017, 2018 in the Indian Journal of Gastroenterology, on which an editorial has also been written. And this actually got me the National Award for Best Paper from the Indian Society of Gastroenterology in 2019. So this was the first paper that actually showed that there is a relationship with Ayurvedic herbals, and that herbal does not mean safe. Herbal drugs, because they are natural, it does not mean safe. It is actually maybe much, much more worse than what we actually see in prescription medicines, and this can actually harm the liver.
Oh my goodness, that is pretty extreme. What would be some of the primary herbs and ingredients that would be harming your liver in a lot of these preparations? Are there some
So
common factors in them?
yeah, so if we look at this herb-induced liver injury, which is known as HILI, HILI, herb-induced liver injury, we have a lot of data from traditional Chinese medicine because they use it right, left, and center for even the routine practice. And they have specific herbs that can actually cause liver injury, and it's been documented. But for us in Ayurvedic practice, we have never actually looked into clinical benefits of any of these herbs, which is why we don't know the adverse events also. So what I have seen and what we have published mostly in our data, we have had patients on giloy, ashwagandha. We have had patients on aloe vera. We have had patients on turmeric, which has caused something known as autoimmune liver injury. And the biggest issue is that all of these patients actually they consume uh, multiple herbs. It's not a single herb that we can actually pinpoint. So it's all multi-herbal products. So all of these herbs will have interactions with each other, interactions within the human system. And this is actually what is promoting liver injury. So we don't know what metabolites actually cause this type of liver injury, but we do have a small idea on the type of metabolites that are found inside the drug, because we have analyzed all the drugs and we have identified a lot of plant chemicals, not as phytochemicals or phytosteroids, which can actually harm the liver. And it's not a single agent, it's multiple agents together in tandem causing harm.
Wow, you are blowing my mind right now. And this is one of the reasons why I avoided having in-depth conversations with you earlier, because I knew you would be blowing my mind during this interview, and I wanted it to be live. But you mentioned a lot of the things that are being prescribed nowadays, especially like ashwagandha and giloy. And have these specifically been found to injure the liver directly, or is there I mean, do you think it's one of the other ingredients that go along with this, like say with Chawanprash or with, I mean, I've seen shops with big bottles of Giloy being, sold left, right, and center with nothing else mixed in. There are Giloy is filling the Amazon stores with juices of different varieties mixed in with a whole bunch of different things. Turmeric, of course, is something that everybody has been recommended. Have turmeric milk, have hot turmeric milk to to reduce inflammation and to avoid getting COVID and things like that. So these are the three major ingredients that I think are really making their rounds these days. And do you think people are in genuine danger even if they're consuming these singular supplements separately? Or do you think it's more of the combined effect?
Yeah, so in that sense, I think we'll have to discuss a very important point, which is known as types of liver injury. So we
Mm-hmm.
have two types of liver injuries, basically. One is known as dose dependent. And a classical example is paracetamol. So if you have paracetamol beyond a particular cutoff, that is more than 8 to 10 grams at one shot, that actually can cause liver injury and can lead to liver failure. And lower doses of paracetamol, somewhere around 4 to 6 grams, is harmful in a patient who actually has an underlying liver disease. So this is dose dependent. So if you consume it within the dose, it does not harm you. But if you consume it
Mm-hmm.
above a particular threshold, it harms you. That is dose dependent. Now there are other drugs which can actually cause harm without, it's independent of the dose. Like you take
Mm-hmm.
a single drug or a single tablet or a single dose, whatever dose it is, it can act harm you. This is not a idiosyncratic liver injury. Now, this is very dangerous because anybody can develop any type of liver injury with that particular single drug exposure. And this is very classically seen with painkillers. So if you look at the older version of painkillers like diclofenac and nimbustolide, which are actually not should not be available in the market, but it is still available. Those painkillers can actually cause liver injury if you take a single dose. Unfortunately, all of the Ayurvedic herbals are idiosyncratic because we have not done any studies on any of these herbals in the right method to actually identify what doses are good for us or what is beneficial or what doses are actually harmful. Most of these patients actually take these multi-herbal drugs over few weeks or few months, and there is no regulation in whatever doses they're consuming. One Vaidya might say take 3 teaspoons per day. One Vaidya might say take 5 teaspoons per day. So that is how it goes because there is no regulation. They don't know what they're doing. And this actually can cause idiosyncratic liver injury. And if you ask me, anything which is unknown that can actually promote or cause a liver injury in the idiosyncratic manner, stay away from it because that can actually lead to liver transplants. This is very important because I've had 3 patients consuming Giloy and Ashwagandha together and coming with severe liver injury, jaundice, and they have actually gone into something known as drug-induced acute liver failure, where they require a liver transplant to stay alive. And this is idiosyncratic liver injury. So you don't want to take that chance. You don't want to do something that you don't know about. The simple thing. So unless and until we have good data to show that ashwagandha within this dose for this particular disease is useful, stay away from it. Do we have such clinical data currently available on ashwagandha? Absolutely not. Because we want to know what in ashwagandha is beneficial for you. So that particular compound or that molecule, whatever it is chemical, it has to be in its purified state, and it has to do benefit for the patient or whoever. Plus, it should have negligible side effects or tolerable side effects. So unless this is done, we don't prescribe the whole plant. It's like you want to have a coconut. They ask you to come let's rip off the whole coconut tree and get a coconut. It's like that. I mean, that's not what's going to happen. In drugs, you have to be very focused in whatever you are prescribing, and such data is not available for any of these herbs that we are using right now, right, left, and center.
Especially with ashwagandha, I have seen a lot of even Western websites, even something like, there's a supplemental website. I don't remember exactly what the name was. Examine.com. Yeah, that was the one.
Yeah.
Where they have cited a lot of information about ashwagandha and talking about, it helping increase testosterone levels, helping increase recovery after exercise, and so there are a lot of claims, especially when it comes to manliness for some reason. But is there any actual research out there on ashwagandha that it is beneficial in any way, legitimately?
So there are a lot of studies on ashwagandha in the preclinical evidence pool. For example, a lot of studies on ashwagandha extracts in rat models and mouse models, and even very small human clinical trials, which actually show that it actually increases testosterone levels, it improves memory, it's like an immunity booster, and a lot of stuff. But if you actually look at these trials, I mean, one is preclinical, so we cannot directly extrapolate that to clinical scenario. And second is most of the human trials done are very underpowered, and they have very soft clinical endpoints. And it's not ideal for us to follow those endpoints to routinely use this as a practice. So if you go by the levels of clinical evidence, it should be a randomized double-blind trial, then there should be meta-analysis and everything. So if you look at meta-analysis of ashwagandha, you don't see any good, high-quality data coming out of it for us to recommend ashwagandha for anything. Because none of that data actually exists. It's all very low quality, high risk, heterogeneous data that we cannot use for our clinical practice. Plus, if you look at recent developments in ashwagandha, there is a study published in Liver International, a journal called Liver International, by the United States Drug-Induced Liver Injury Network and the Iceland government, where they have identified multiple cases of ashwagandha-induced liver injury, which is very important. About 8 to 12 cases of ashwagandha consumption leading to liver injury. They have a very, very strong pharmacovigilance group which actually identifies such herbal liver injuries. And this was recently published in the Liver International. So this does not mean that, ashwagandha is safe also. So we need really good randomized clinical trials in specific disease conditions with very good clinical endpoints for us to identify anything beneficial from ashwagandha, which currently we don't have, which is why I don't recommend ashwagandha for any disease condition.
I see. And has there been have there been any studies to understand what that toxic, I mean, what quantity of ashwagandha dosage will actually make it toxic?
Yeah, so this is very important because this has not been done. No, they would have had some extract-based studies in animals to show that there is safe at some particular level. But recent data has shown that you cannot extrapolate animal safety data to humans because it's totally different. So we should definitely have phase 3 and phase 4 clinical trials in humans to identify the extract dose and frequency that is safe for us to consume. Now, another issue is that people don't consume ashwagandha alone. So they actually take ashwagandha, then they take some giloy juice, they take aloe vera, they take curcumin, they take a lot of stuff along with it. It comes
Hmm.
as a package. Now, because of this, we have something known as herb interaction inside the body.
Hmm.
Ashwagandha will interact with soil. Because of the interaction, a metabolite might be formed. A chemical might be created inside the body, which is actually harmful. Not ashwagandha per se, not giloy per se. So that actually give us more data on herb to herb interactions, which is currently lacking in most of these herbal medicines studies.
Okay, so we can't really say, but to be on the safe side, just avoid it as much as
Right.
possible.
Exactly.
Now,
But if there is
turmeric.
evidence to use it, there is no issue in using it, right? It's safe and there
Mhm,
is evidence to use it. Absolutely. I'll prescribe. If there is any
mhm.
evidence or any safety issues, and of course, why not?
Okay, and what about turmeric? Because turmeric is something that most people think is perfectly harmless in any quantity, so to speak, within reason. And a lot of people swear by it. I have been prescribed turmeric for different conditions when from doctors. And from what I have understood from it, first of all, its bioavailability is next to is negligible, but it can be increased with the inclusion of pepper uh, in in the mixture, and it does seem to have a lot of effects on inflammation. But from what you're saying, all of this information is still from preclinical trials, and we can't really understand what it is, what effect it has in humans, or has it actually been tested to any extent in humans?
Yeah. So turmeric as a whole has absolutely no value to be used as a medicine or a
Mhm.
drug. We have to use is what is actually bioactive inside the turmeric, which is actually curcumin or curcumin
Mhm.
oil, which is a group of compounds inside turmeric, which actually has this anti-inflammatory potential and everything. So what people do is they actually take the whole turmeric, they mix it with milk, make it healthy doodh or turmeric milk, and they drink it, saying that it's going to help them. Actually, it doesn't, because whatever turmeric they're using directly drinking it, it doesn't get absorbed in the body. It's wasted.
Mhm.
So there is no effect of turmeric if you mix it and directly consume it because it is not going to get absorbed. Which is exactly why we say there is no bioavailability. It's very poor, very poorly absorbed.
Yeah. Hmm.
If you mix turmeric within milk or water and then just drink it directly, it does
Hmm.
not enter your body because it gets destroyed in the stomach because of the acids and the digestive enzymes. Which is why we say
Hmm.
there is no bioavailability. So haldi doodh and haldi turmeric milk, everything is actually just marketing tactics. It doesn't help you at all. Which is why we actually mix something with turmeric like pepper or a nano emulsion form, which actually bypasses the stomach and gets absorbed in the small intestine. That is how it gets absorbed. That is why we have human formulations where we make different formulations like nano emulsions and nanolipid formulations, which can actually bypass the stomach and get absorbed in the intestine. So curcumin is the active component. Now, a lot of studies, like you have mentioned, preclinical in on curcumin show anti-inflammatory, septic, whatever you name it, the properties there for that molecule. But these are all in animal models, and it actually cannot be extrapolated to humans. There is one condition where they have shown that there is some good benefit of curcumin against placebo in osteoarthritis, degenerative disease of the bone, and also some effect of curcumin in a condition known as inflammatory bowel disease, where you have severe ulcerations of the small intestine. And
Uh-huh.
curcumin usually helps patients, if they're on standard of care, it actually helps patients maintain that remission. That's it. There is some good data on it, but it is still not recommended for routine practice because the problem with curcumin or turmeric is that it has dose dependent toxicity. And this has actually been found in animal models. We don't have good human data, where they have shown that if you increase curcumin levels or turmeric levels in rats, it actually causes liver injury. I myself had patients who are on few weeks of daily curcumin to boost their immunity during COVID, and they have come up with something known as autoimmune liver disease, where curcumin is actually inflammatory, anti-inflammatory, and it actually modulates your immune system also. So once that immune system gets badly modulated, we call it disrupt happens is that your immune system can actually start attacking your organs. And this is what we call as, and we have had patients with consumption of turmeric developing autoimmune liver disease, for which we had to put them on steroids so that their immune system is actually brought down, and their liver injury has been salvaged. And this happens. This is real. So unless and until we have good data, clear-cut data on dose, frequency, and everything, even curcumin is currently not to be used for any diseases.
Oh my goodness, it's a lot worse than I expected. I actually was trying to
It's true.
yeah, no, when I was writing an article about turmeric a year or so ago, and the essential conclusion was that we just don't know what kind of an effect it has. But at that point of time, I had no idea about this specific side effect, which I think is probably the crux. Like all of medicine is all risk versus benefit, and if the benefit is questionable with an extremely high risk, which is I mean, but which I mean, there's a chance of that side effect without actually knowing exactly what dosage that side effect might kick in with. I mean, it's just safer to stay away from that medicine, I guess.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's just,
That
yeah.
is why we
I
push for evidence-based medicine, no, and not eminence-based medicine or faith-based medicine.
Absolutely. The current state of Ayurveda, I'm saying on the on on the large scale that you have probably encountered. Do you think that actually goes back to the Ayurvedic texts and doctrines? Are they prepared from that, or are people just playing around with stuff and doing whatever? Like you had mentioned Live 52 a couple of days back on Twitter, and that actually also blew my mind because Live 52 is also something that I have known from the time I was a kid, like that if you have a liver problem, if you have jaundice, you are chugging Live 52s all day long. It was prescribed to my dog when he had infant jaundice. Um, that was many years ago. Of course, he's passed away from other unfortunate problems. But my brother also swore by it when back in his party days, where he was coming back. When he was partying a lot, he was like, "Live 52 will save me from it." Of course, I've gotten to know better over the years that it probably doesn't have much um, value, especially since it's not an Ayurvedic product per se, but it is a proprietary product that Himalaya has come up with just by themselves. And somehow it's become ubiquitous in the market. So, could you speak to, first of all, if you know how much of the Ayurvedic products in the market today are actually Ayurvedic formulas, and how many of them are just proprietary herbal concoctions that companies are making? So yeah.
So I'll take that question in three parts. One is about the classical Ayurvedic texts. So if we look at the classical text that has been used for teaching and training and everything, it has actually undergone a lot of changes. So if you look at the recent latest classical text, you can actually see that a lot of scientific modern medical terms have come out in between. They have the Sanskrit verses, and it's clear cut definitions and whatever, plus they include scientific terms in between. So that actually shows that they are actually integrating a kind of modern medicine kind of an approach along with the classical text. So it's not classical text anymore. It's now kind of an integrative medicine where you actually mixed and matched science and pseudoscience together. That is what the classical texts are currently. The Ayurvedic formulations are basically classical formulations and proprietary formulations. The classical formulations are based on classical text. For example, Chanprash or Dashamularishta. These are all classical formulations. Proprietary formulations are actually pharma driven. They decide some combinations and then they market it for some specific disease. Example is Live 52 or Coronil by Patanjali. And what happens is that they don't actually follow any classical text. They just pick and cherry pick few herbs with some benefits which is written in the classical text, and they manufacture it, and then they put it as an Ayurvedic proprietary product. Now, because it's Ayurvedic, it does not require any standard trials to be done on it, because it's they say that it's there in the text. A few of this stuff is from the text, and you don't need to run any trials on it, and they directly market it. So most of these products are like that. So Live 52, if you look at Live 52 as a classical example, they have actually done trials on it, or so they claim. If you look at the trials from 1955 till now, I mean that's decades. You don't see any quality human clinical trial in that. Absolutely none. Not a single powered randomized double-blind controlled trial. Not a single meta-analysis of these trials. Not a single systematic review of these trials. Nothing. Most of their trials are either in rats or guinea pigs or in the test tube. And they actually showcase that and say that we have done almost 300 studies on this particular molecule, and it is found good for this particular stuff. So please prescribe it. And this is classical low evidence, high marketing strategy. And a lot of people actually fall for it because they see all these scientific terms associated with Live 52, like it's anti-inflammatory, reduces oxidative stress, it prevents liver injury, increases liver regeneration. These are the words that they have used for their marketing strategy, and people actually fall for it. Physicians fall for it, and that is how you write it. But if you ask me directly, is there any role for Live 52 for any disease per se in 2021? Absolutely none, because they still have to do a lot more trials on it.
Oh my goodness. Well, yes, I'm quite sure. Speaking of which, do you think that some Ayurvedic preparations could show clinical promise if and become a part of modern medicine if they were studied rigorously, ethically, and honestly?
I feel that, I mean, if you follow the principles of Ayurveda to test a particular product or a herb, it will not work.
Mhm.
Because Ayurveda principles are basically pseudoscientific principles. Because Ayurveda still looks at healing energy, looks at aligning vata, pitta, kapha, and everything. It actually does
Yeah.
not make any sense in the pathophysiological aspect of a human disease. So if you
Mhm.
follow the Ayurvedic principles, I don't think we can get anywhere, because you cannot test pseudoscience. You cannot falsify it. It's very difficult. But if you look at the examples of, say, artemisinin, which is an anti-malarial, or take an example of reserpine, which is an antihypertensive. These are all taken from traditional medicine text. And what they did was, you have a herb, and you identify the bioactive component in it, and you test the bioactive component in its pure form, and then
Mhm.
you see for benefits and adverse events. For example, if you look at artemisinin, so you don't give the whole artemisia plant to treat malaria. You take that artemisinin derivative and give, and it is very safe. It is effective, which is why it is one of the most important treatments in malaria. Now, if you look at reserpine, which is taken from sarpagandha, Indian snake root. So if you give the whole root to a patient, it actually causes a lot of side effects, including depression, mental illness, and a lot of stuff. But if you take reserpine out of sarpagandha and use it specifically for hypertension, high blood pressure, it works for hypertension, mild to moderate. But still, long-term use is not advocated because it has its side effects. That is
Yeah.
why we don't use reserpine in our current practice anymore, even though Ayurvedic still use it. Modern medicine has actually dumped reserpine in one corner because we have other safer, better alternatives for treating high blood pressure. And this is how science works. So Ayurveda is stuck in a time, and it doesn't move out of that circle. Now it cannot move out because its principles are pseudoscience. So what we should do is we should actually break open that circle, and actually test these herbs for bioactive components, put them into research, and then take it forward. So that actually becomes Ayurveda's contribution to some extent, if you actually look at it. And this is how traditional Chinese medicine has helped us identify drugs for malaria, and we can still do it. But the problem is you should shed your pseudoscientific thoughts, and that's the only way forward.
That is so true. Actually got, I think, I shared this document with you, which is basically Baba Ramdev's questions to allopathy and the pharma industry. And high blood pressure is actually one of the things that he cited. So I'll share the document with you. I think if you could put this answer in there, that would be very helpful, especially
I'll do that.
because I think that would really kind of round out the perspective that I think he's trying to get to the point that you don't have a cure, but that doesn't mean that that means that Ayurveda has it. Might not be a cure; it's a treatment. It is something that keeps
It's a
things
treatment.
stable and keeps people healthy on the whole, so they can live a normal life to the greatest extent possible. But that doesn't mean Ayurveda has all the answers either. I think that's what he's trying to get at. Speaking of which, there has been, of course, Coronil is, it's the bane of our lives right now, and there are more coming beyond that. But I had one question about Coronil. I've written extensively, not extensively, but I've done a basic overview of Coronil and what possible studies each one of the ingredients would have as related to infectious diseases like COVID. And of course, none of them really do. First of all, have you seen the so-called trial that they've come out with? I think they did come out with it, and of course, have been trying to say that this is finally a clinically tested, clinically proven medicine, which it isn't. I've heard that the trial has a lot of flaws in it. But could you speak to that? Have you looked through that trial?
Yeah, actually, I did a complete TED write up on the trial on
Mm-hmm.
Coronil, where and it was published in this journal called Phytomedicine, if I'm not mistaken. It's an
Mm-hmm.
alternative medicine journal. And the issue with Coronil study is that one, they have chosen patients who can actually get better without Coronil, or any medicine for that matter. So they have chosen asymptomatic patients and mild group of patients who do not require any treatment. If you look at any of the COVID guidelines, you'll see that these patients do not require any drugs. They just require
Mm-hmm.
simple symptomatic care. So they have chosen the right group to showcase their positive findings. So this is cherry picking. So they have already decided that these are the groups that they will treat, so that there is definitely a positive outcome. Number one, that is a bias. Number two is that they have actually given endpoints which are, you can manipulate it. And most of their endpoints are actually investigation endpoints. They are not clinical endpoints. So we want to know how many of these patients who had mild COVID developed moderate COVID or severe COVID, and how many of them actually landed up in an ICU, or how many of them actually had to take oxygen at home or whatever. And such endpoints are not there in that study. So they have just looked at negative PCR and high interleukin and normal CRP levels and some blood investigations, which don't make
Mm-hmm.
sense in the real world. But it is easily manipulated. You can actually manipulate those endpoints very well, and you can actually showcase your positive attitude, your positive outcome, which you already prepared in your head. So this is why that study is biased, because that study does not give us any real value to treat a patient in the real world clinically. So if you go by that study, yes, it is peer reviewed and published in a third rate uh, alternative medicine journal, which will come up on PubMed. But that doesn't mean that that study is actually quality, because you can see a lot of junk on PubMed, including
Mm-hmm.
Chinese traditional healers destroying cancer cells using the force. It's published.
Oh God,
So
really?
don't think PubMed is your to-go place, because PubMed has a lot of crap in it. A lot of nonsense has been published, and it is up to the reasonable or a logical physician to identify what is good for his patient and not. And I think everybody should have some scientific temper in
Mm,
analyzing data in that manner, which is good for the patient also.
absolutely. I did also hear that there is a possibility of a steroid which was included in Coronel. So apparently, it's a constituent of Tinaspora ardifolia, I think, if I'm pronouncing that properly, uh, which is one of the ingredients in the Coronel medical thing in Giloy, apparently. Uh, no, that is the Latin name for Giloy. My bad. But apparently, Giloy does contain some steroids. Is that of relevance to or of danger to us
Yeah,
if we're
so
consuming
just like
Coronel?
how we have steroids in our body,
Mm-hmm.
even plants have steroids. So they are phytosteroids, steroids of plant origin, which can actually work the same way steroids work in a human body. For example, we have prednisolone or methylprednisolone, we have hydrocortisone. even these plant steroids have the same effect on a human body. So
Okay.
plant steroids itself, they have a huge potential to modulate our immune system or decrease inflammation. And that is why we require a particular steroid component, which is going to be safe and effective for us to use, and not the whole plant. Because the whole plant might contain actually other steroid groups also, which might be harmful for us. So, which is why we actually see a lot. I mean, endocrinologists see a lot of patients who are on herbal medicines for a few months or a few years, and they actually develop steroid toxicity. They gain weight. They develop something known as Cushingoid phases, which is all part of steroid toxicity, adverse effects associated with long-term steroid consumption. And if you look at their medications, now no steroids are there. Only herbal products are there. But herbal products do contain steroids, either adulterated or plant derived. It can actually harm you. So this is very important. Yeah.
And speaking of Coronil and other COVID treatments, I did one of our listeners has actually sent in one of these messages that we get on WhatsApp that says that the research suggests Ayurveda and Siddh medicines help in coming out of COVID faster and also keep the immunity strong. We've heard that a lot. A pivotal research study by a Frankfurt Biotechnology Innovation Center called FIZ found that Kabasura Kudineer has the strongest inhibitor, 84%, of spike glycoprotein in coronavirus strains in restricting entry of virus into cells. And this, of course, has been going around all over the place. It seems that it has been promoted by Sri Ravi Shankar and srishitatta.com. Art of Living will get a discount. And of course, it contains turmeric, amrut, Kabasura Kudineer, Shakti drops, Tulsi Arka, and probably other things as well. And one of the listeners was also asking about the effectiveness of Kabasura Kudineer and others like Moringa and Ashwagandha. Ashwagandha we've already spoken about. And should we take them as a part of our daily lives? Can they be taken as supplements? So this is, I know, it's a big question. First of all, about its effect on COVID, and secondly, on general health, especially with this Kabasura Kudineer or whatever it is.
Yeah. So Kabasura Kudineer is actually from Siddha. That's a Siddha related drug which has been heavily promoted in Tamil Nadu by the government. Even cops were handing out Kabasura Kudineer drinks to pedestrians at some point during the COVID outbreak last year. Pictures of it on the net. Now, if you look at the study, that particular study that he has mentioned from that FIS Institute, it's actually an in silico study. It's a computational study where they have actually shown that a lot of these herbal products, and they have actually done docking simulation using a computer to show that one of these products can actually, act against the spike protein much better. This has absolutely no value in our real life scenario, because docking studies, molecular studies come at the bottom, below the bottom level of evidence generation. These are just proof of concept. And if you look at the Kabasura Kudineer study, which the newspapers quote, magazines quote, evening dailies quote, but none of the peer-reviewed publications actually quote. They are actually pharma-driven or government-driven or maybe media-driven kind of studies. It has absolutely no clinical studies done on Kabasura Kudineer to show that it has any effect on immunity or COVID for that matter. This is just complete bonkers of they have made complete bonkers out of the general population, and this is going on in WhatsApp and Facebook, and also it has been sold by multiple pharma outlets, Ayurvedic pharma outlets, and this is just reducing the wallet size and nothing else. Now, Kabasura Kudineer, it seems that there was a study done which I could not find on the internet, but I did find a lot of preclinical and these molecular docking studies on it, on COVID and other things. But it has, if you ask me, I would want to prescribe something that is useful for my patients. That is what I want, because I have to take care of my patients. And if Kabasura Kudineer actually does something for my patients, I'll prescribe it. But I don't see any evidence for me to prescribe Kabasura Kudineer anywhere on the internet or in any clinical repository. And this is absolutely nuts. I don't think people should go for Kabasura Kudineer, especially I have actually analyzed a Kabasura Kudineer drug, and this has actually been tweeted by me, where I've actually found out that Kabasura Kudineer from different companies, when we actually looked at it, it was heavily contaminated with modern medicines, including steroids. Maybe that's why it is actually acting on the immune system. It actually contains steroids, and that too classical modern medicine steroids, not even plant steroids, and heavily contaminated. And this is why maybe, and that patient who has actually taken it landed up with liver injury and underwent a liver transplant last year. And I've actually tweeted about this also. If you look at these Kabasura Kudineer drugs from different companies all over, I'm sure we'll find a lot of contaminants and a lot of adulterants, because of which they seem to act on the human body. But it is dangerous, and I do not recommend taking Kabasura Kudineer, not just for COVID, for anything.
Okay. And what about Moringa?
Yeah, Moringa is also one of those pet Ayurvedic herbs, which has a lot of preclinical data. You can actually, you can just blindly touch one anti-inflammatory, anti-parasitic, anti-aseptic, anything, Moringa will come in that. It's all over the place, just like your curcumin and ashwagandha. It works from brain to toe. It's that kind of a thing. If you look at Moringa, no quality studies, some preclinical studies, some molecular docking studies. That's it. If you want to use Moringa, use it in your curries. I think people put it in sambar, and it's actually quite tasty.
And same with turmeric. I think we
Yeah,
will get along very well with that.
Because these
And
are recipes. Yeah.
speaking of spices, there's another one which is a lot of people are recommended clove for respiratory issues chemically. Some people have seen it work on sore throats and dry coughs and stuff like that. Does clove have any beneficial effects other than its cooling or warming effect?
If we look at any of these spices for that matter, cloves or ginger or cardamom, whatever, they will definitely have some bioactive compound which has some effect in the body. I mean, that does not mean they are medicines. They are food flavoring items. And if you test them in preclinical conditions in a test tube on cells, you will see some changes here and there. That does not mean that you have to use it as a medicine directly for cold and cough. And the biggest issue, take ginger and everything for their cold and cough and everything. These are all traditional practices which has been, for us to use any of this, because even without using any of this, it will get better. I don't think anybody in the US or in the Europe or in Australia or in the New Zealand actually do steaming with clove and cardamom and ginger for their colds. I don't think so. And still their cold is okay. Their diseases go away. These are all self-limiting diseases. And using these traditional practices does not mean that they are helping. It means that you can actually do even without it and get better. That's what the whole clinical trial scenario will tell us. But that has not been done in any of these spices for that matter.
Wonderful. Okay, one last one on Ayurveda and maybe alternative medicine, because we're running out of time, so we'll just power through the next couple of questions. First of all, could you shed some light on alum water and how it works, if it works?
So alum water, personally, I have not had any patients consuming it. I've not had anybody, taking it and coming to me with any issues. So my experience in discussing that is not much about alum water. But I think it is mostly to do with marketing, if you ask me. Alkaline water, what they say. And it's a lot to do with marketing. If you look at the clinical benefits, even though you can actually see a lot of preclinical effects of alkaline water, I don't think it can be translated clinically, because we don't have any data to show that there is evidence that alkaline water is good for anything. This is what I feel. Just like any other alternative therapy that we actually come across.
Yeah, I've recently written about alkaline water. There's a new one in the market called Evocus, which is almost in every convenience store that I could find. I've actually got a bottle of it. I'm going to be shooting a video about that this week and tasting it for once. But I've also tried to look up all its benefits, or if at all. And essentially, it's an extremely expensive antacid, which is also probably not as effective as a much cheaper Digene. So I
Exactly.
advise against
This
it.
is this marketing. Yeah. Just marketing.
Yeah, and they say in multiple places on the packaging they say there's 70 plus minerals, but they don't mention any of them in the ingredients list, which is very suspicious.
Which is mislabeling. They just say
Yeah.
it, but it won't be there. So if you look at this ashwagandha extract that you are getting or buying from the market, they'll write ashwagandha extract, and most of them won't even contain ashwagandha. It might be
Oh
chalk
my
powder for
goodness.
that. Yeah, it's mislabeling.
Oh, when you're not just that, there's no regulation, there's no oversight that we have in this country at all. But is there a way for is there a way to make it at least give some legal weight to people like us who are opposing uh, unscientific treatments and that are actually putting people in harm's way? Is there any way that we can sue or at least have some legal repercussions for people who are producing this stuff?
I mean, the the whole issue is with the regulatory framework, because
Mm,
it's Ayurveda. It has been tested and it has been there in this country for thousands of years. They believe that it does not cause harm. So
mm,
that's like appeal to faith and appeal to nature,
yeah.
because it's herbal and it's safe. So we have to actually take that particular legality out of the equation. And then
Mm,
if somebody, for example, Sri Tattva or Patanjali or Himalaya, if they are promoting a drug for a particular disease condition, it has to undergo the same stringent methodological evaluation that we do for our prescription drugs. It has to. This has to be made mandatory. But this is not the current scenario. The current scenario is anything Ayurvedic proprietary means you can bypass any of that because it's already been written. It is considered safe, and you please market it directly. All you need to do is show that the factories that this has been made is clean. That is your GMP.
oh
That's it.
boy.
So you can actually make poison in a GMP setting and sell it. That's what the government
Ah.
says. So
Well,
this is
that's what they're doing actually in some
exactly. So
cases.
it's basically poison made very cleanly for your consumption, and that is not what we are going to do for healthcare. And once this particular legal term is broken down, and everything must be tested in the right way, because it's being promoted as a healthcare, even though they don't mention that as a medicinal product. They mention that this is
Mhm.
for non-medical purposes, Ayurvedic proprietary product for health supplement, they say. So the moment you say
Yeah,
health supplement, it does not come under the drugs regulation, and this has to be broken. Only then we can take it forward.
absolutely. And in fact, there was this guy, I read the story on the print of a person who has created some random concoction along with eye drops in Andhra Pradesh, and now the state is going to
Nellore.
support manufacturing it for him. I'm I'm speechless. It just blows my mind that that is even possible. I could make whatever the hell I want to. I could mix shampoo and soap and put it in a pill form and dry it out and sell it to people saying, just have 2 pills of this a day and your diarrhea will be cured.
Yeah, but
And
then you
people
have
will
to
buy
put a
it.
herb in that. You'll have to put a herb
Uh,
in that, and that becomes
I'll put some
Ayurvedic
dhania.
proprietary medicine.
I'll put some dhania in there to make it taste good. Okay. One last thing I really wanted to touch on, because this is something that I felt was very intriguing. I read the thread, but I am unfortunately not that scientifically literate to be able to really understand all the nuance in it. 2DG, that has been produced by the DRDO. It has already become famous on WhatsApp University. People are, craving for it, dying for it. A sachet is now over 900 rupees, almost 1,000 rupees. So, what is 2G, 2DG? What is it supposed to do, and does it do anything at all?
Yeah, so 2DG is quite interesting because this is almost 50, 70-year-old molecule. It's not a new guy. It's been there for a long time, just lying in a corner. And multiple studies done on 2DG for multiple other disease conditions, for example, as an anti-cancer agent, even as an anti-influenza viral agent in 1970s and 1950s, long back, showed that 2DG actually has no clinical benefit when it comes to the real deal. And this medicine is basically 2DG is glucose, where they have substituted a hydroxyl group. So it's like a glucose mimetic. It acts like glucose, but what it does is it does not go through all the pathways of glucose inside the body. It basically breaks one of the metabolic pathway which uses glucose. So there is something known as glycolytic pathway. So if you give 2DG, all the cells that are using glucose as their energy source, their energy source gets blocked because 2DG is not actually glucose. It's a glucose mimetic. And that is why it was initially used for cancer treatment, because they thought that if you give 2DG, cancer cells use a lot of glucose. So if you give 2DG, the glucose consumption will be cut down and you can actually kill the cancer cells. But actually that did not happen in the real thing, because there are other cells in the body that actually use glucose too. And that is the brain and the heart. So if you give 2DG, it can actually cause problems in those two systems also. And some studies actually showed that. So it is not used as any therapeutic value. It is usually given in research settings or as a diagnostic molecule. Now this 2DG, somebody somewhere down the line reviewed data on COVID and said that these viruses also uses a lot of glucose, and that is why the disease actually becomes bad. So these guys decided to use 2DG in that aspect. And this is not the first time 2DG has been used in a viral disease. It's been used previously and it has failed. Now, Dr. Reddy's and DRDO has done this study saying that 2DG actually works in severe COVID. Now, recently, data has come out from that particular study where they have used, like I said, this is like the modern medicine counterpart of Coronil, the 2DG. It's exactly like that. It is exactly like that. It's not a saffron-clad charlatan who's doing it. It's proper pharma companies with the defense department doing it. But it is Coronil for the modern man. That's it. And they have identified that 2DG works in COVID. But if you look at the study, highly flawed, very, very subtle endpoints, no clinical endpoints, and it is actually been prescribed for patients with critical COVID, even though the study actually looked at moderate COVID. So, lot of data in the dark, no publication, no peer review, no preprint, nothing. And if you actually look at the history of 2DG, it does not work for any infectious diseases. And it is a highly marketed product. And I'm sure the company will reap the benefits, not the patients.
Oh man, we are in so much trouble. It's heartbreaking, really. But just to tell people that, the priority is that if you have mild COVID, you just need crocin to manage your fever. That's it. That's all you can do. And if you have anything slightly more severe than that, if your blood oxygen levels are dropping, call your doctor. Don't just take medicines you see off, WhatsApp or whatever it is, or what the rumor mills are spitting out or what the media is spitting out. Remdesivir does next to nothing. Plasma has now been taken off the board, but plasma transfusions don't do anything. So please just go to your doctor and don't self-medicate. That is the most important thing. Stop taking all the Ayurvedic supplements. Stop taking all the steroids that people are saying that you have to take. Do not take it if you're mild, because that is the kind of stuff that leads to black fungus infections, because then that down regulates your immune system and it just leaves you open to other infections that you could get while you should be focusing on recovering from COVID.
Exactly.
So it just blows my mind. But there's tons more that I could definitely talk to you about, and there are things that we had planned on discussing. But I think we leave that here right now. I'd love to have you back, but thank you so much for clearing up all these questions. I think I'm going to have to break this video into a couple of parts and kind of share it in different ways. I'll have a full version up on my podcast and on my YouTube channel. But over time, I think we have so much value in this video that I want to keep milking it for all it's worth. So thank you very much for coming on. We'll definitely have you on again. Could you please tell people where they can get in touch with you, where they can see your work, or where they can ask you questions?
Yeah, so I'm basically more active on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at DrAbbyPhilips, Dr. Abby Philips. I'm also on Facebook, but that's more of a personal space. And my email ID is abbyphilips@gmail.com. So I'm available on these two social media platforms, and I would love to hear responses from you. And thank you for having me on this podcast. It was quite interesting for me to discuss with an open mind.
I'm so glad you came on. You've definitely cleared up a lot of doubts of my own and the listeners as well for Rationable. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, whatever is left of it. And I'll see you soon. Thank you very much, Dr. Phillips.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye. Guys, thank you so much for listening in. This was fantastic. It's definitely one of the best interviews we've ever done. And there's so much information in this, so concisely put together. It's of huge value to both me and I hope definitely to you. So if you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe and share this video. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening to this on the podcast and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. I'm also on Patreon. At Patreon, just look for Rationable on Patreon. I would definitely love your support to continue this work and focus more of my time on it, because bringing you science-based, evidence-based information that will help you make better decisions in life and help you fact check all the information that you get uh, every day, especially in times like this when we are overflowing with pseudoscience, we're overflowing with bad information that could put our lives in danger. Like Dr. Phillips said, the things that we thought were relatively benign or natural can actually be harmful because they do have active ingredients. And if they are not studied properly, we are putting ourselves in harm's way. And I think we can all benefit from that insight. So please support my work, support the scientific community, the science communicators of India. I'll keep sharing and I'll try and get more people who are science communicators in India on these interviews to give you a new perspective on the world we live in and the country we live in and the kind of information that we get here. So thank you very much. Please follow me on Twitter at BeRationable. Go to berationable.com to check out more information like this, more articles and the podcast, and subscribe to the Rationable podcast if you haven't already. I will see you very soon next time.